The black luxury SUV spun across the rain-soaked highway like a wounded animal before crashing violently into the roadside barrier. Shattered glass exploded across the pavement, smoke curled from the engine, and terrified drivers slowed their cars just long enough to stare before speeding away. Inside the wreckage, billionaire tech mogul Adrian Vale tasted blood in his mouth as pain surged through his ribs. His expensive watch had cracked, his designer suit was stained red, and for the first time in years, he was completely helpless. But what hurt him most wasn't the accident. It was the horrifying realization that despite having everything money could buy, there wasn't a single person he trusted enough to call for help. Before we continue, if you believe kindness and second chances still exist in this world, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Tales. Your support helps bring more emotional stories like this to life. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance, but the storm drowned most sounds. Adrian's vision blurred as he struggled to stay conscious. Then suddenly, another car pulled over nearby. It wasn't a luxury vehicle or a security convoy. It was an old faded blue van with one broken headlight and rust creeping along the doors. A man rushed out into the rain without hesitation. He wore worn-out jeans, muddy boots, and a cheap jacket soaked within seconds. Adrian forced his eyes shut instinctively. Years of dealing with greedy business rivals and opportunists had taught him one thing: people treated billionaires differently when they knew who they were. For reasons even he didn't understand, Adrian decided to pretend he was unconscious. The stranger pulled open the damaged SUV door with trembling hands. His breathing was heavy, but his voice carried unexpected warmth. He kept reassuring Adrian softly while trying to stop the bleeding with his own jacket. Adrian stayed motionless, listening carefully. Moments later, another smaller voice approached. It was a little girl no older than 8. She stood beside her father holding a tiny umbrella that barely shielded either of them from the rain. The man spoke gently to the child, telling her not to be afraid. He explained that helping people mattered more than being late. The little girl asked if the injured man was rich because the car looked expensive. The father laughed quietly and said something that hit Adrian harder than the crash itself. He told his daughter that pain feels the same whether someone sleeps in a mansion or in a small apartment. He said money can buy comfort, but it can never guarantee someone who truly cares if you survive. Those words buried themselves deep into Adrian's chest. As the father carefully dragged Adrian away from the leaking vehicle, the storm grew worse. Emergency responders still hadn't arrived. The man introduced himself only to comfort the child, calling himself Marcus Hale. Adrian listened silently while Marcus explained how they had to stay calm together. Every few moments, Marcus checked Adrian's pulse with genuine concern, whispering encouragement even though he believed the man couldn't hear him. For the next 30 minutes, Marcus stayed kneeling in the mud beside a complete stranger. His daughter, Ivy, held the umbrella over Adrian instead of herself, shivering from the cold. Adrian realized no one had shown him such selfless care in years. Not his business partners. Not the women who dated him for status. Not even the relatives who constantly fought over inheritance rumors behind his back. When the ambulance finally arrived, Marcus quietly stepped away without asking for anything in return. No photographs. No reward. No recognition. But Adrian never forgot his face. 3 weeks later, sunlight poured through the massive windows of Adrian's private hospital suite overlooking the city skyline. His injuries were healing, but his mind remained trapped on that rainy highway. Investigators had already informed him that Marcus never stayed to learn the identity of the crash victim. He had simply gone back to work after dropping Ivy at school because missing a shift meant losing pay. That haunted Adrian. Using his resources, Adrian eventually located Marcus. He discovered the single father worked 2 exhausting jobs, one as a delivery driver during the day and another cleaning office buildings at night. Since his wife's death from cancer 3 years earlier, Marcus had raised Ivy alone in a tiny apartment barely large enough for both of them. Bills piled endlessly on the kitchen table, yet every teacher, neighbor, and coworker described Marcus the same way: kind, humble, dependable. One bright afternoon, Adrian made a decision that shocked his entire corporate staff. Instead of sending lawyers or assistants, he personally drove to Marcus's neighborhood. The billionaire stepped out of a black sedan into streets he had never walked before. Children played soccer beside cracked sidewalks while laundry hung from apartment balconies swaying in the warm breeze. Life there felt raw and real compared to the polished emptiness of Adrian's penthouse towers. When Marcus opened the apartment door, confusion spread across his tired face. He immediately recognized Adrian from the news. Embarrassment crossed his expression as he apologized for not realizing who he had rescued. But Adrian interrupted him quietly. For the first time in years, his voice carried emotion instead of authority. He admitted that he had pretended to be unconscious that night. Marcus looked stunned. Adrian confessed he spent most of his life believing people only valued wealth, power, or influence. Pretending to be unconscious allowed him to hear the truth without masks. And what he heard from Marcus changed him forever. Tears filled Marcus's eyes as Adrian thanked him not only for saving his life, but for reminding him what humanity sounded like. Over the following months, an unlikely friendship formed between the billionaire and the struggling father. Adrian helped pay Ivy's school tuition anonymously at first, but Marcus discovered the truth and resisted accepting charity. That only deepened Adrian's respect for him. Instead of offering handouts, Adrian created opportunities. He hired Marcus to oversee community outreach projects within his company because he trusted his heart more than most executives he'd ever met. Slowly, Adrian himself began changing too. He started visiting shelters without cameras present. He funded medical programs for struggling families. Employees noticed he listened more and shouted less during meetings. For years, Adrian Vale had built skyscrapers and corporations, but Marcus Hale taught him how to build something far more important: connection. One sunny afternoon nearly a year after the accident, Adrian attended Ivy's school ceremony where she received an award for kindness and leadership. As applause filled the room, Ivy spotted Adrian in the crowd and ran toward him with the brightest smile he had ever seen. In that moment, surrounded by ordinary people in a simple school gymnasium, Adrian felt richer than he ever had standing inside billion-dollar boardrooms. And maybe that's the strange truth life teaches us when we least expect it. Sometimes the people with the smallest homes carry the biggest hearts. Sometimes strangers become family. And sometimes one moment of kindness on a rainy roadside can rescue more than a life, it can rescue a soul. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, share, and comment below. Your support helps Lifeline Tales continue sharing emotional stories that remind us humanity still exists in this world.